I got through a lot this month for me, and to be honest, it isn't even technically the end of the month yet. Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Corinne, and here I talk about all things book. I talk about my writing journey, everything I'm reading, and some bookish topics. Today, we're wrapping up everything I read and listened to in March, even though it's like the 28th of March, and the book I'm reading right now will be done by the 31st of March. But I have enough to talk about, and I'm going to move that to next month. Let's start off by talking about the audiobooks I listened to, because I listened to three. First of all, I listened to Wuthering Heights, of course, because the movie came out and I wanted to be informed in my opinion of it. I actually really loved the movie, I really enjoyed it. I know that it's not the same as the book, especially now that I've read it, and I do think whitewashing Heathcliff was a bit of a choice. I've seen one theory that Catherine and Heathcliff are kind of like the first and second generation of the book merged together, which is why the characters don't look quite like the original Cathy and Heathcliff. However, I think for the whitewashing aspect, that's a bit of a flimsy excuse. But for other aspects, I could really see it. And you know what? It was messy, it was brat, it was a vibe of a film. It was very melodramatic, like the book. Everyone was a bit more palatable than they are in the book, which I wasn't mad at. And I had a good fun time. And then I read the book, and I also had a good time. I wouldn't say fun because obviously the characters in the book are a lot more toxic. Heathcliff does some like really terrible things that aren't in the movie, like killing Isabel's dog rather than treating her like a dog consensually in a weird BDSM kinky way. That was a bit of a choice. And the book's also like not very sexual at all. I don't think it's sexual at all, in fact, which was fine. It makes sense for like that time period. A lot of the scenes from the movie were taken right out of the book, with the dialogue remaining the same. Some of those more famous, intense conversations between Cathy and Heathcliff. And I loved all that. I loved how dark it was. I loved how intense it was. I'm glad I did it as an audiobook because I think it's quite a complex read, and I'm just not reading a lot of old classics or literary fiction at the moment, so I think that really helped my comprehension. The narrator was really good. I don't know which version it was. It wasn't the Amy Lou Wood one, but it was an older woman, and she was good. She did lots of like good voices. And yeah, I thought all of the characters were really deplorable. And I enjoyed it. I don't think I'm going to like go into an analysis. I was going to do a video about the movie versus the book, but to be honest, I think everyone's covered it. Like there's nothing I can say that hasn't already been said. So that's it. I enjoyed both as separate entities, and we'll just leave it there. Then I listened to When in Rome, which is a really nice, like, romantic comedy. I read it for book club, and I think everyone else in the club really enjoyed it as well. Like, it was just a cute, wholesome read. It's about this girl called Amelia who's like a super famous pop star. She's getting really burnt out and really stressed out, so she goes to Rome, Kentucky, not Rome, Italy. She's really obsessed with like Audrey Hepburn and the movie Roman Holiday, which is where Audrey's character also goes for a break in Rome and then has a romance and then kind of leaves at the end. So she kind of copies the movie essentially and goes to the closest Rome to her, which is the one in Kentucky, where she meets Noah, who's this kind of grumpy guy who's like really handsome and also quite a wholesome, classic kind of guy. He's really nice. He's really guarded, and it is a dual POV, so we see his perspective before like Amelia knows like his full backstory. He had a romance and an engagement with a woman from New York who he kind of left his town for, and she ended up cheating on him and breaking his heart. And so he's kind of vowed not to do that again. And Amelia's like this super famous pop star, and the paparazzi follow her around and stuff. She's kind of like Ariana Grande level, Britney Spears level, maybe, although Britney's, she was really harassed. But she's up there. She's one of the big pop stars of the moment, which adds a lot of complexity. And she doesn't want to like ruin his life or break his heart. She's about to go on this 9 month tour, which she obviously can't get out of contractually. And she doesn't want this small, cute town where everyone knows each other to be like ruined by the paparazzi either. But the town are really nice. They treat her like a normal person. They protect her from the paparazzi. She has a really nice time there. Obviously, she like has this romance develop with Noah, and it's a bit of like, will they figure it out or won't they? And it's a classic romance, so I won't spoil it, but you can probably guess what happens. And it was just really nice. It was a quick read, 7 hours, 300 pages or so. And if you want something really chill and just romantic and cute. I would recommend it. And then the third audiobook I did this month was Ring Shout by P. Jelly Clark. And this is a novella, so it was quite quick. It was like 5.5 hours. I think I completed it in a couple of days. And it was sensational. I absolutely loved it. It's about three black women who are fighting against the Ku Kluxes, who aren't normal Ku Klux Klan members. They are actually infected with this kind of parasite that feeds off hate, and it turns them into like these kind of monsters, and they're quite grotesque. They have like mouths for eyes and like lots of eyes. They kind of like feed into that phobia of like people that are scared of holes and things, and they're quite grotesque. And she has this sword that she fights the monsters with, and the sword kind of channels like the voices of her ancestors from like Africa, and all of this like rage of these people who have suffered at the hands of white people and kind of clan members. But it's not like very anti-white. Like they fight these monsters, but they kind of vow not to kill the human members of the Ku Klux Klan, which I thought was really interesting. And our main character, like she kind of fights these literal demons, but she also has to like fight some inner demons and stuff like that as well. And it was just amazing. It was so good. It had action and it had a lot of exciting moments, a lot of great characters, great character moments. I feel like it had a lot to say politically. It was set in the 1920s, so there was like that historical fiction kind of aspect about what it was like to be a black person in the deep south during that time. It was very much like Sinners, which obviously came out after this book was published, but just the same kind of setting, same kind of time period, black people fighting monsters who are kind of clansmen, which the vampires and Sinners also kind of are, though that's like more of a subtle thing in Sinners. They have like their costumes sitting off to the side in the house. But yeah, if you liked Sinners, give this little novella a go and you will not be disappointed. It was amazing. And the audiobook especially was fantastic because the narrator was really authentic, and there's a lot of like ring shouts and like bluesy songs which she kind of performs. She sings all of these bluesy songs. And so the narration like really brought it to life for me. Now, audiobooks out the way, let's get on to the physical books I read this month. I don't know if you watched my recent reading vlog where I did the post apocalyptic kind of end of the world reading club, where you get a little post apocalyptic novel and you open gifts at certain pages, and that's a really fun experience. The book was We Are All Ghosts in the Forest by Lorraine Wilson. If you watched that video, you'll know that this book was a bit of a miss for me. It didn't really hit. It's about this world where the internet collapses and ghosts, like digital ghosts, kind of come out of the computers and kind of live in the world, and they infect people with this digital ghost disease. And we've got this woman, she's like the only black woman living in this town. It's kind of close to Russia, it's like Eastern Europe, and people are a bit racist or like discriminatory towards her. They've got some feelings about like her witchcraft because she's a bit of a herbalist and she has a small holding. She sees like visions from the bees and stuff about coming famine and floods and things. And she meets this little boy who doesn't speak and has been kind of left for her by his father. And it's like, oh, will she find a like solution to this ghost virus? We shall see. That's kind of what the blurb says, and that's kind of the book. But it wasn't very thrilling. It was very slow. She's quite like emotionally distanced. Like she doesn't really let people in very easily, and so she doesn't really let you as the reader in very easily. And she also has a slow living herbalist kind of life in nature, and that's described a lot, and it's very repetitive. And like everything that I just described that's from the blurb, that could cover like 3/4 of the book, honestly, half the book at least. It takes a really long time for them to get out in the world to like find answers or whatnot. So yeah, not my favourite read of the month, but I enjoy the subscription box and all the little gifts. And if you want to watch my vlog about that, it's the one I did like 2 weeks ago. Earlier on in the month, I read the sequel to Bunny, I Love You Bunny by Mona Awad. This is a nice signed version, and I think this was perfect for spring. It's kind of set like October to spring, but bunnies, flowers, very Easter coded. And I really enjoyed this initially. The premise is that Bunny is actually the book that Samantha Mackey published and has been really successful with it. So that's kind of her unreliable narration of what really happened. And the bunnies are mad about how they've been portrayed. So they take Samantha, tie her up in the attic, and tell her their side of the story. And in doing so, they tell us their side of the story. So we start with chapters from each of the bunnies, kind of with very unique voices, very vivid narration, which I loved. They kind of tell the story of how they all met each other, their impressions of each other. They're a little bit bitchy towards one another, like they're kind of frenemies in a way. And they discover their magic, how they transform the bunnies, and make this first bunny boy. And that part was all really great, and I loved it. And then we get a really large section from Arius's point of view, which is their first bunny boy. They had kind of imprisoned him in the attic, and he escapes and is wielding an axe and is a bit unhinged. He's a bit like childlike because he's doesn't really understand the concept of like death and stuff. So some things happen, and that was quite tense because like we as the reader know more than Arius, and we can see like how this is going to go wrong. There's some good like links to the first book, and the literary style for his chapters is really interesting. He speaks like a bunny boy, like a bit childlike. He's got a really unique narration, and instead of like full stops, it's quite punctuated by smiley and happy faces. But that section goes on for like 150 or 200 pages. It's really long and it's quite quirky. I think it could have possibly been cut down quite a bit. And then we like briefly go back to the bunnies, but they're all speaking as one voice. So that's a chapter called like We. I thought that was really interesting. I liked that chapter as well. And then we go back to Arius, and again, it was just too many pages for me of Arius. I wanted to get back to the bunnies because they're who I found like the most compelling. I didn't really care that much about Arius, even though he was quite like an interesting concept as a person, quote unquote, person bunny person. But yeah, it was good. I enjoyed it, but it could have been cut down a bit. I think it went on a little more than it should have, and Bunny remains the best book for me. And this version, which is like the Waterstones version, it has an additional chapter from Samantha's point of view at the end, which was actually really good. And I don't know how this book would have read and ended without that chapter. I don't know if it's in every version or not, if it's just in this version, but definitely seek out this version because that chapter was really good and illuminating. It's called Swan's Way. If you've read Bunny, you know what that might be in reference to. I won't spoil it. But yeah, I enjoyed this, but it wasn't super necessary and a little bit too long. Then, also for book club, I read When the Moon Hatched. This is a romantasy set in a world that kind of doesn't rotate. Half the world is in darkness and half the world is in sunlight, and around the middle it's kind of permanent sunset. That's called the fade. I thought that concept of the world was like really cool. It was really artistic, and I really liked the visuals. Doesn't make sense, like from a biological point of view, but I just ignored that and enjoyed it for what it was. In the fade, there's like this wall that goes down the middle of the world, and a lot of people live there, and it's kind of got a trench down the middle. I can't remember what it's called, but it's got a specific name. And then there's like more of the world underneath the wall. That was all cool. I really liked all of those aspects. There are lots of interesting creatures in this world. Some of them are like sentient and they talk. Some of them are very magical. And of course, there's dragons, and there's three kinds. There's the kind of ice world, dark half of the world dragon, there's the sunny half of the world dragon, and there's the fade dragon. And people kind of fly around on these dragons, but there's a bit of a twist of like the moon plumes, which live in the dark half of the world and are kind of made for cold climates, can't survive in the sunny half of the world. They like burn up, go blind, like they have a really horrible time. The saber scythes, which are in the sunny part of the world, similarly can't survive in the cold half. And then the molten maws, which live in the fade, they can kind of travel to each side of the world. So they're like the most flexible kind of dragon. And when these dragons die, they fly up into the sky and they turn into like a moon. They basically solidify into rock, which I thought was a really beautiful and cool concept as well. That's why it's called When the Moon Hatched. Our main character, she's an assassin. She's a bit Selena Sardothian coded. Some stuff happens, there's some violence, and then she meets this man called Khan who helps her out of the prison. Turns out he's like the king of the sunny half of the world. Can't remember what it's called. The Burn. It was called The Burn. And at that point of the book where they meet, it turns kind of very romantic, and there's not a lot of action. It's clear that she has like another being living inside her and that she's got a lot of memories that are blocked off. I thought that was all interesting from a psychology point of view because when someone goes through trauma, especially like in early childhood, they can sometimes develop dissociative identity disorder and suppress memories and things like that. So I kind of felt like that was what was going on here, that she's got this other identity suppressed and another identity also created through trauma that's a bit more mysterious that I won't get into for spoilers. And then there's like Rave, this assassin, who's kind of the main character that we follow, but that's almost like a separate person. So I thought that was really interesting. I'm not sure if lots of people that don't know about dissociation picked up on that, but that's kind of how I read into it. And I did like the romance. I did like a romantic interest and I enjoyed the book. I just thought it got a bit slow. Lots of people talk about how the book is too lyrical and like too descriptive. I didn't really think that. I think maybe people are just more used to romantasy that's like a bit more direct, perhaps. I did really appreciate the glossary in this. I think that helped me just study up on the world and figure out like what she was talking about. Perhaps there could have been some more explanation in the text so that we don't have to rely on a glossary, because I don't think we should need a glossary. We should be able to understand. But maybe for like romantasy fans that haven't read as much epic fantasy, this is a good kind of gateway book and the glossary is helpful. But yeah, maybe the writing style isn't for everyone, but I quite liked it. But I expected a bit more to happen and a bit more drama and action that I feel like was a little bit missing. But maybe we'll get that in the next book or in like future books in the series. And this book was a lot of setup. I haven't thought about this book a lot since finishing it. I'm not like in a rush to get the next one. I might wait for it to come out in paperback. It's actually coming out on my birthday, but I don't know. I'll see how I feel. I think I might just wait or do the audiobook for it. But talking about it now, I'm like, oh, you know what? That actually was good, and I did enjoy it. So I don't know. We'll see. I liked it, and I'll read the next one. But like, I can be patient. I can wait. And then finally, I read Daggermouth, which is super heavy to hold. I said that this was like indie published in my video last week where I was looking for dystopian romance comps. It's actually self published, and this is what a self published book looks like. This is kind of how it's printed by Amazon, I guess. Um, the more you know, I've learned. It has been picked up traditionally in like a seven-figure deal, so it's getting re-released in like hardback in June, I believe. And then the next book, the sequel, is being traditionally published next year, I think March 2027. So I don't know if these copies are still available, if I just got the last of the stock, or if there's a few left. But it is coming out in June, more traditionally. So you don't have too long to wait if you want to read it. As I said in my book of trying to find my comp titles in dystopian romance, this book is quite similar to mine in concept. It's got this totalitarian society that's kind of in rings, so there's different sections of the city and they can't intermingle, and like mercy's not allowed. It's very totalitarian and people get executed a lot. It's about Grayson, who's the son of this dictator, and he kind of works as an executioner. He has to kill everyone who's been a dissident in the society, and our female character Shadira is hired to assassinate him, but it goes a little bit wrong, and they end up in a political arranged marriage to try and like get the boundary under control, which is where she's from, which is like the poor part of the city on the outer ring. And it's kind of a dark romance. It's a very true enemies to lovers. They are like try to kill each other in the beginning, and then they kind of learn the truth about each other, see each other from a different side, and there's a romance. But there's a lot of the romance still to go in book two, I feel, which is good. I don't like when people get together too quickly. I feel like the relationship progressed at a really healthy pace. Not healthy, because it's actually kind of a dark romance, but it moved at a pace that was quite natural. And there was a lot of like personal conflict between the two of them and a lot of inner conflict, which I thought was really strong, really well done. There was also an additional romance, which isn't on the blurb, between Grayson's sister and his friend, which was a nice addition. That one's not enemies to lovers. And I won't say too much about it, but just know that there's like an additional romance subplot, which is really great. It's nice to have two. And there's also like another love interest for our main character, Shadira, who is also a really good character, and you kind of root for him as well. So there's a lot of romantic elements in here. I feel like a lot of the dialogue was quite strong. Like the book has quite a lot of conversations, but those conversations have a lot of conflict in them and move the needle quite a lot, so it's quite entertaining. The dystopian side of things, like the politics of the world and of the dictator, I thought was a little bit flimsy. Everyone in the elite kind of circle wears a mask, and it feels a bit like they wear a mask because it's like a cool aesthetic for the book. And obviously, it's kind of about taking people's individuality and stuff. But their masks are also all kind of different. Like they have their own different characteristics. So there's still individuality, and you can still tell who everyone is. So I don't quite know what the purpose of the masks was. Our main dictator is also like just kind of an evil guy. He's like terrible. There's not really any redeeming qualities or things that make sense about why he's so bad. He's just kind of a psychopath, which means like obviously you root for the characters and you want the downfall of this man, but I'm like surely some people should root for this man for him to like maintain the control that he does. I feel like most dictatorships like that kind of work because those dictators have some support. People in power with them support them, which isn't kind of the case here. So I'm like, I don't know how he's managed to maintain the control that he has by just being a straight up tyrant. But there we go, and the outside world is just like non-existent. There's like not really any answers about why they're in this city state. They mentioned that there's like two or three other city states, but that's it. We don't know why or what those are like. So there was a little bit of a lack of world building. I hope some of these questions will be answered in the sequel, but I think, I would have liked some more political commentary about the why of the world. I would have liked that to have more nuance and more development. Because I like dystopian romance to have both. Like, I feel like The Hunger Games has both, and the romance is kind of secondary. Here, the romance is very, very much primary, but the dystopian elements are kind of like set dressing, which I don't really like. But I still enjoyed it. I had a really fun time. I enjoyed it much better than like Silver Elite. I think going into it, you just have to know what it is. That it's more like a dark romance in a dystopian setting rather than being like a true dystopia. And I might eat my words at the sequel, that might turn into more true dystopia. But time will tell. I think to really, really love and enjoy this book, you have to turn your brain off a little bit to the politics and the sociology of it, which feels like a bit of a shame for something calling itself a dystopia. But I have seen so many positive reviews of people that normally like romantasy and dark romance and things that liked the dystopian elements of this book and like found it meaningful and stuff like that. So I don't want to criticize it too much. I think it could be like a good gateway into dystopia for people that enjoyed all of that young adult market in the dystopian space and enjoy romantasy and like are just getting back into reading potentially, because a lot of true dystopias, they're quite like literary fiction, they're classics, they're not always the most accessible or the most easy to read. So this book could be a good gateway into the genre that might lead people down reading these kind of books as well. And I think there is a place for that. And I think the like romantic elements and the smutty elements were more tasteful than those elements in like Silver Elite, because I was really critical of Silver Elite and kind of saying I don't believe smut really belongs in dystopia, like it feels a bit icky. And I do stand by that to a degree, but this didn't give me the ick. I thought it actually did make sense. It felt very true to the characters and the world. So I think this is probably an example of that being done well and appropriately. I think even like those toxic dark elements of the romance, they do really make sense with the situation. So I don't have a problem with the way this was executed at all. And I like that people are enjoying and loving this book because it means that people might enjoy and love my book, which turns out to be actually quite different in vibe to this. So I can like whew, relax a little bit that someone's not beating me to the punch and actually maybe created a gap in the market and a popularity that maybe my book can slot into. Anyway, that's everything I read. That's all my thoughts. I might do a more in-depth video about Daggermouth, although I feel a bit talked out about it now, so we'll see. Subscribe to my channel if you want to see more bookish content. Follow me on my writing journey and hear what I think about all of the books I'm reading. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!